right, these are notes on parallel lines cut by a transversal. So a transversal is a line that cuts through at least one pair of lines. And when those lines are parallel, there are a lot of special angle relationships. So this is a pair of parallel lines. They will never intersect. And this line that cuts through them is a transversal. So this transversal makes it so that all the angles up here are copied exactly down below. So there are going to be a lot of angles that match up or have the same measurement, and we have different names for those. You could also have a pair of parallel lines and a transversal, and then all of these lines are exactly copied down here, or all of those angles. And you could have a second transversal, and that's fine, but all of these angles are copied down here. So if you have two different transversals, when you're looking at all of these relationships, you're just looking at one transversal to find matching angles, and then you could stop and look at another transversal to find missing angles. But you wouldn't go like diagonally across and work on two different transversals. That green road map on the wall, that has two different transversals, so there's like two parts of that problem. One looks at the left-hand side, and one looks at the right-hand side. So you never cross over. Okay. Corresponding angles are angles that are in the same position on different lines, and corresponding angles are congruent. So, if we look at our pair of parallel lines cut by this transversal, this angle is on the top left-hand side of that angle set. If we were to move down and look at our other parallel line, the other part of that, the angle that's on the top left-hand side corresponds. These match up. They're in different locations, like different parallel lines, but they're in the same position on each of their individual lines. So the blue angles correspond with each other. If this angle is 100 degrees, since they match up and they're congruent, this angle is also 100 degrees. So that is one pair of corresponding angles. If you wanted to look at the top right-hand side, that will also correspond to the top right-hand side of the bottom line. So if this angle is 80 degrees, the bottom one will also be 80 degrees. So these blue angles match up. That is one corresponding angle pair. These yellow angles match up. That is a different corresponding angle pair. You could have these green angles. They're both on the bottom left-hand side. Or you could have these pink angles. They're on the bottom right-hand side. So each color represents a corresponding angle pair. So the problem that we skipped on our warm-up, B and F would be corresponding angles. That would be an answer to a question. Name a pair of corresponding angles, B and F. All right, alternate interior angles. What does interior mean? Inside. So they're going to be angles on the inside of the parallel lines. And what does alternate mean? Like if you're alternating colors in a pattern, what does that mean? switching, like going back and forth. So they're going to be on opposite sides of the transversal. So when we talk about the inside, we're talking between the parallel lines. So that's where your angles will be. So this green angle right here will be inside. And to go opposite, we have to go to the other side of the transversal and to the other line to make it alternate. So it like flips over. And these two angles, they're both the little acute angles. They're going to be congruent. If you look up at my example up here, this angle right here, I said was 80 degrees. This yellow angle was also 80 degrees. If this green one is 70 degrees, this other one will also be 70 degrees. You have one other alternate interior angle pair. It would be the flip side of that, the obtuse angle. So this obtuse angle is 110 degrees. When you flip it over and move it down, this is its alternate interior pair. This is also 110 degrees. So, corresponding angles are congruent. Alternate interior angles are congruent. What about alternate exterior angles? Are they going to be congruent? Probably. They are congruent. So alternate interior and alternate exterior angles are very, very similar. Interior angles are on the inside, so where do you think exterior angles will be? Yeah, outside. So alternate exterior angles are angles on the outside of the parallel lines. And again, because they alternate, they're going to be on opposite sides of the transversal. So this top left-hand angle is on the left-hand side of the transversal. It's the obtuse angle. If we move to the other parallel line, we need to flip it to the right-hand side to find the other obtuse angle so that they can both be congruent. You also have the acute angle pair. So right here, if this were 70 degrees, it's an alternate exterior angle from this one down below. That would also have to be 70 degrees. And these numbers I'm just making up for an example to prove a point. So it's not because I measured them, I'm just putting down possible numbers that they could be. All right, and last one, consecutive interior angles. Again, interior means inside. And instead of alternate inside angles, these are consecutive inside angles. What do you think consecutive means?
Next to each other?
Sure, next to each other, I guess. So instead of flipping across the transversal, they're going to be on the same side of the transversal. So this angle right here could be, I don't know, 80 degrees? Let's say 60. If this angle right here were 60 degrees, the consecutive interior angle is right below it. So these two match up. This would be one acute and one obtuse angle. This one would have to be 120 degrees. What should this last blank be? They are what?
They are 60.
Yeah, but not always. So if you look at this example, 60 and 120. If you look up here, 110 and 70. If you look way up here, 180. So what do consecutive interior angles? Yeah, supplementary. Consecutive interior angles are supplementary. So you have another supplementary angle pair that would just be on the right-hand side of the transversal. This one, alternate interior, would be 120. So down below, supplementary would be 60 degrees. So you have to know these words mostly in some sort of like multiple choice type setting. On occasion you'll have to fill in a blank. You should notice that this 100, 180, 80, 100 repeats down here, 180, 80, 100. So this set of 4 angles is just duplicated down below. You should notice that there are only 2 possible angle measurements, either 100 or 80, and this one would be either 70 or 110. This one would be either 60 or 120. So all the acute angles always have the same measurement when you have parallel lines cut by a transversal. All of the obtuse angles have the same measurement when you have parallel lines cut by a transversal. Okay? So it's a lot of new words. The back of this you can practice. I'll leave your vocabulary up on the front so you don't have to flip back and forth. And this one, transversal, that's just to describe this line. This will never be an answer, so you can ignore this. You never say that like these angles are a transversal. So don't ever use this as an answer. It's just to set up our notes. These bottom ones you would use. There is a such thing as consecutive exterior angles. I don't know why it's not on these notes. It doesn't really show up anywhere. But consecutive exterior angles would just be the ones on the outside. So like this one and this one, those are consecutive exterior. These are consecutive exterior. But don't worry about that too much. All right, so these 4 angle relationships, use them to answer all the questions on the back. Oh, and vertical angles are just like, ignore this. These are vertical. These are vertical. Ignore this. These are vertical. These are vertical. Okay?